Hello. Today's lesson is on phrases, dependent clauses, and independent clauses. So first of all, a phrase is a group of words that does not have both a subject and a verb or a predicate. Examples would be a girl. Another example is running quickly or across the field. None of these has both a subject and a verb, and therefore they are all three different kinds of phrases. Next slide. We have two kinds of clauses that we're going to discuss, and really these two kinds of clauses are what we're going to discuss for the rest of the chapter, really, after this section. So, first let's define what a clause is. A clause means a group of words with both a subject and a verb, or subject and a predicate. Okay, verb and predicate mean the same thing. All right, so first kind of clause of the two that we're going to talk about is a dependent clause, otherwise known as DC. We would abbreviate it that way. A dependent clause must have a subject and a verb, but it still cannot stand alone, even though it has a subject and a verb. Look at the next slide for more explanation, please. A dependent clause is not a sentence, even though it has a subject and a verb, because it has a word or a couple of words, usually just one word, but it may have a couple, on rare occasion, 3 words at the beginning of the clause that make that group of words not able to stand alone. Okay, here are a couple of examples. Since I met your mother. All right, you do have a subject, I, you do have a verb, met, and you even have a direct object, but you have that little word at the beginning of the group of words of the clause called since. Okay, the word is since. And that word makes this group a dependent clause rather than an independent one, because this group of words cannot stand alone. Therefore, it's dependent. Okay? In fact, if you read it aloud, you're going to hear that you're not done. Since I met your mother, what about it, right? Okay, so that's a dependent clause. One more example of a dependent clause here. Whose hat was lost. Okay, now, if this had a question mark at the end of it, you might say it could be a sentence, okay? A simple sentence, but a sentence. Whose hat was lost, question mark, okay? But if you're not asking a question, this would never be a complete idea, okay? We're assuming that this is the second part of a complex sentence, and we'll talk more about what a complex sentence is in another day or two, okay? But we're assuming that you have an independent clause or a complete idea before this dependent clause, and whose hat was lost describes someone in that first part that we don't see here, okay? Also, look at it. Hat is your subject. Was lost is your verb, your predicate, okay, your simple predicate, your verb phrase. But we have a word at the beginning of this, whose, which makes it not able to stand alone and put a period after it, okay? Finally, for this section of information is the independent clause, okay? An independent clause is a sentence. It is a complete thought. It's a complete idea, okay? It can stand alone. So the last slide for this section, go ahead and go to the next slide, okay? Now, I don't know what it looks like on the YouTube because I haven't looked at one of my videos in its entirety all the way through. But on my iPad here, it says this is slide 4 of 5. If that shows up on your YouTube video that there's another slide, there is not another slide, okay? Don't worry about it. This is it. This is the last slide, okay? All right. Again, independent clause, otherwise known as IC, abbreviated, okay, is a sentence. It is a complete thought. It stands alone, okay? It's a sentence, okay? Complete idea. Here are two examples. An interrogative sentence, complete thought, that stands alone. Who do you think you are? Question mark. Okay. You have a subject. You. Do think is your verb. Technically, you are. We could put the word that in front of it, and we would have a dependent clause there as part of our sentence. This is technically a complex sentence. You are who would be your separated dependent clause, but you don't have to worry about that. Okay? So perhaps this is a bad example of just an independent clause, because it's actually a sentence with an independent and a dependent clause. It's a complex sentence, okay? My point is here that this group of words can stand alone, okay? Another one. He is risen indeed. All right? He is your subject. Is your linking verb. Risen is your predicate adjective. And indeed is your interjection. And yes, we did leave out interjection at the end of the last chapter that we covered at the end of last week. I left out subordinating conjunction because we are going to talk about subordinating conjunctions and what they do at the end of this chapter, okay? And I left out interjection because everybody should know what an interjection is and how it functions, okay? So he is risen indeed is an exclamatory independent clause. It's an exclamatory sentence. All right? Questions? Please message me. Please take your time on this chapter. This is the hardest chapter that you guys have had heretofore this year, and it is the hardest chapter we're going to do, in my opinion, because the very hardest chapter in the book, praise be to God, you're going to love it when you hear me say this, the verbals, we are not going to do this year. That is the only chapter we are not going to cover this year. And
you better like it because they suck.
well, that was my daughter, Rebecca, if you didn't realize that. And she's right, they stink. Okay? They are hard. Some of you would be fine with them. We had them last year for all of those that you were with us last year. We had them last year, and as you probably recall them and may not have been too fond of them, or you may have liked them, a few of you, grammar nerds, love you, okay? But they are harder, okay? We are not doing them. The only chapter we won't do. So, praise be, you had them last year, most of you, and you will have them again next year, Lord willing. Again, any questions, hit me up. Love you guys. See you soon.